Welcome to Wasatch Weekends on this August 26th special 1-hour edition. I'm your host, Ben Roof. On today's show, we're going to talk to Summit Outdoors, a new local brand. We're also going to talk to local artist Jordan Daines. And Tracy Miller has got a wonderful zucchini fritter recipe for us. And we're going to round out the show talking to Powder Days author. Now, quick local announcement. There are going to be a few changes at the Bonanza Flats Conservation Area. Parking will no longer be allowed up there, and it will be enforced. From now on, parking along the roadway from the Y intersection at Guardsman Pass Road all the way up to Pine Canyon Drive is no longer allowed. Instead, it is asked that you park at the Guardsman Pass Road trailhead parking. There is some additional parking in the area, but parking is no longer going to be allowed beyond that Y intersection. But let's take a quick look at today's weather.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Welcome back to Wasatch Weekends. We are now joined by Jamie Parker, one of the founders of Summit Outdoor, a new local Park City-based brand. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So you guys are just starting to get up and running, right? With a couple of products, but you've got more on the way. Could you tell us a little bit about Summit Outdoors and how you guys kind of got started?
Yeah, we launched 2 months ago in June, a local brand. My wife and I have been talking about this for quite some time. We both met actually at Nike and have a passion for the outdoors and consumer products. And yeah, we, over the COVID period, started to work on what we saw as a consumer problem. And, started to put pedal to the metal in terms of bringing this brand to life. And so we launched in June. And we do have a few products coming in the fall, so we're very excited about that.
So right now, with you guys just getting up and running, you've already got products available in a couple of brick and mortar locations and online, correct?
Correct. So our primary storefront is www.summitoutdoor.com, SMMT Outdoor.com. And then we are on Main Street at the Collective and a few other stores. So we are sort of available in a limited way in some bricks and mortar stores.
So tell us a little bit about what you guys are currently offering and a little bit about what you're hoping to offer in the future here.
Yeah, so Summit launched with an idea. Both Michelle and I have coastal roots and ended up in Park City 6 years ago and have sort of this nostalgic connection to tote bags. And we really like the idea of creating a bag that lived up to our environment, to make it Park City worthy and mountain resort worthy. And so we launched with the Powder Loft tote, as you mentioned, in 2 sizes. And there's some unique features that make this a little bit different than the tote you'll find in the marketplace today. It's weatherproof, it's water resistant, both on the inside and out. We're using apparel level or jacket level shells. It has a tad more organization than what you'll find in sort of the traditional tote. And it's lofted, which obviously as mountain town residents, we're very sort of used to seeing lofted jackets. But the idea was to bring some of that lightweight comfort and protection into a bag, with the added benefit of it does make it insulated, which does allow for things to be cooled for a little period of time. So think Deer Valley concert or something like that. We are primarily an accessories brand. So the products to come are, think mostly tote, leather, bag products, and then ultimately we'll do some accessories like drinkware that fit in that bag.
Well, the bag itself is absolutely gorgeous, and that was going to be one of my next questions for you. Since it does have that lofted exterior, I was wondering about insulation, but is it also water repellent too, since it does have a little bit of that jacket look to it?
Yeah, so we used apparel level fabrics, which is ultimately more expensive, but we really wanted to make something that kind of lived up to our hometown. And so we're using waterproof shells both on the inside and out. They also have covers on the top, which keeps the precipitation, which we're very used to, out. So we've built this very much with sort of Park City as our muse and making sure that it can live up to our environment.
Well, it looks like an incredibly durable product as well, well made with rugged stitching and some pretty intense handles.
Absolutely. We really built this thinking about it as an outdoor company with timeless design tried to be, designed in. And so we're looking to build something that will last a lifetime, but also designed in a way that will never go out of style. And that was really our goal as we tried to build the Powder Loft Tote.
So let me ask you this about just Summit Outdoor in general. How did you guys come up with a name, and where did that idea originate from?
It's a great question. So Summit started as an idea around just pursuing the aspirational peaks of lifestyle. And so Summit as a word really resonated with us. It obviously has a nod to Summit County too. So a connection to sort of the local place and the founding and origins of the brand. And then Summit, because it's an acronym, SMMT, stands for Sustainable Mountain Marine Travel, which is really our product brief, building things that can live up to a mountain lifestyle, the coast, and the travel in between.
Fantastic. So with that sustainability part of your acronym there, it's my understanding that you guys are trying to give back a little bit to the community and to kind of help improve sustainability and outreach here in Summit County?
Yeah, we think it's absolutely critical for our brand to have some connection and connective tissue back to our community, as well as have a soul. And albeit we are not perfect, we're doing a few things that we think are a little bit more considered than the average brand. We're first making all of our products with, I would call it 95% plus recycled, either post-consumer or post-industrial recycled materials. The second thing is we're using Blue Sign partners. This generally means that our manufacturing partners are more considered around how they run their businesses, whether it's using solar, how they treat water, et cetera. And then finally, we are a 1% for the Planet brand, and we are giving back locally to the Summit Land Conservancy. So one of our pillars of our brand is protect the places we live and play. And so by giving back through every sale, we can protect some of the land and water in our local area.
Well, that's great that you're really trying to make an effort here to contribute back directly to Summit County as well. Let me ask you this. As coming from a large corporate background with Nike, tell me a little bit about how you guys have any of the challenges you've encountered trying to get a new business off the ground. I know that can be something that's really challenging, especially if you've got kids in the house. So tell me a little bit about that. Just how have you guys kind of created a business out of nothing?
Today helps with school starting again. Yeah, it is a challenge. I think shifting from a large company that has lots of resources to really putting your own energy and your own resources into something is always going to have a little bit of a bumpy ride. There's both pros and cons to that. I think what we love about it is we're attached to every facet of the business. We're thinking about product lines 2 years out. And we're writing thank you notes as we pack boxes and ship them out on a daily basis. And so I think one of the things that's been a challenge is, both Michelle and myself are involved in this. So we obviously have a lot invested within this household. And we're trying to balance being, great parents and stuff as well. But the value is our heart and soul is in it as well. And so we get to be a part of kind of every facet of building this brand and hopefully making sort of Park City proud.
Well, and it can be such a self-motivating factor too, to be working for something that you're passionate about, something that's driving you as opposed to just showing up somewhere and collecting a paycheck. Let me ask you one more question before I let you go. It's my understanding that it is kind of essential if you're trying to start a business to have one particular thing, and that's a garage. Mattel was started in a garage, like Disney was started in a garage, Apple, Microsoft. Let me ask you this. Do you have a garage?
I do have a garage, and it's absolutely full of product. We basically set it up, probably not the favorite topic for Michelle and my kids, but the garage has been taken over to be a warehouse and to be a pick, pack, and ship facility. So yeah, we do have a garage.
Well, hopefully here in the future, you're able to move out of that garage and take over a warehouse space as you guys continue to expand. Jamie from Summit Outdoor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Where can we go one more time before I let you go to check out your tote bags and the rest of your products?
Best place for information on the current product and for products upcoming is www.smmtoutdoor.com. And we really appreciate people stopping by.
Awesome. Jimmy Parker, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to the show. If you have a chance to go out and grab one of those fantastic Summit totes, do so. And Tracy Miller has got a fantastic zucchini fritter recipe that can fit right in there for a perfect picnic snack. Let's take a look at that recipe now.
Welcome back. You're watching Colorful Cooking with Tracy Miller, and I'm Tracy. Thanks for joining us. All right, we're going to get down and dirty in the kitchen with a pretty easy recipe. And this is a recipe that I decided to share with you because everybody asked me for it. Anytime I make it for anybody, when I'm catering, they want this recipe. And it's a vegan recipe as well. So a lot of people are really excited about that. We start off with 3 small zucchinis, and I have shredded the zucchini in my food processor. So what you do after you shred the zucchini, squeeze it out. You'll be shocked how much water there is in there. And then we're going to put some green onions in there too, just to give it a little bit of a kick. So I say we do about a 1/4 cup of green onions and just slice them as small as you can. Get them going all the way. They smell really good. Green onions are spring onions, so they're of course in season right now. They're very fragrant. They're really good for you. Of course, put about a 1/4 cup. So we have 3 cups of the zucchini, a 1/4 cup of the green onion, and then what we're going to do is put some salt and pepper. When you are seasoning your food, I don't care what it is, don't be wimpy about it. Like, be pretty generous, especially with veggies. They need salt, they need pepper, they need some good flavors. Okay, my pan is warming up, so I'm gonna put a little bit of olive oil in it. And this is what I like because we're not deep fat frying them. We're not gonna get as many calories, but we're still gonna get a nice flavor. And it's nice and warm right here. So now we have our salt and pepper, we have our zucchini, we have a little bit of green onion, and I'm going to put a little tarragon in there too. And when you're using dried herbs, just use a little bit and smush them around in your finger a little. That kind of wakes up the herb, and you can now smell the tarragon. It smells so good. And I'm going to do a tiny, tiny pinch of nutmeg. Don't overdo that one or else you'll taste it the whole time. So typically I would put an egg in here, but I was working with some vegan customers the other day and I didn't put the egg in there, and I like it better this way. So if you feel like it's not clumping together enough, you can put an egg in, but I would say about a 1/2 cup of flour. So we're going to get that in there. And interestingly enough, I told you to drain out all the water, but we're going to add just a little bit of water so that that is a binder. That's going to bind everything together. And here we go. This is when you get really messy. See how that's all coming together, and it's kind of starting to stick together too. So we're going to make little zucchini balls out of this, and then we're going to put them in the pan and fry them lightly on each side. So what happens, this is a real quick process actually. See how easy this is? I mean, I hope people still hire me to make them zucchini fritters because it's so easy that I wonder if you won't anymore. And now we're going to make little balls out of it. So we'll go like this. I'm gonna bust out a whole bunch of these. They don't even have to be like that pretty. When you're putting them into your pan, you wanna hear your pan sizzle. So I'm gonna crank this up a little bit because we're gonna put a bunch of cold zucchini in a pan and try to get it to sear up. So that means the pan is not gonna be quite as hot. All right, so here we go, making these little balls. This is a fun thing to do with the kids too. And like I said, the vegans, they just really, really like this. And they're kind of hardy. So if you wanted to bring them on a picnic or when you're hiking or something like that, they're easy to transport and they'll fill you up. All of our friends who have gardens around here are about to start getting a lot of zucchini. So we'll give them this recipe. They'll give you their zucchini. You make some of these for them and everybody's happy. These don't take long, so you kind of want to keep your eye on them. If you overcook them, the zucchini will get a little bit mushy and it won't be quite as good. What happens at the perfect cooking temperature is the zucchini kind of melts. It melts in your mouth. It's so creamy and delicious. Okay, we are gonna switch it up and not make it vegan anymore because we're gonna make a little aioli for the topping of these zucchini fritters. But first, let me see if they're ready. They're sizzling. It's kind of getting hot in here. They're sizzling. Let's see. Nah, that's not crispy enough. I mean, it could be if you want to be like that, but we are going to crisp it up just a little bit more. And look at how little olive oil I have in there. And I cook with olive oil over any heat. A lot of people say you can't cook with olive oil if the heat's too high, and olive oil will burn, but when you're making stuff like this and you're sauteing vegetables and something in the frying pan, you can use just a little bit of olive oil. See, it's not even soaked in there. So we're keeping the calories low. We're keeping the health benefits high. We are working with anti-inflammatory foods. Okay, real quick while these cook and then I flip them over, let's make an aioli for this. Aioli is super easy if you want to use some sour cream. What I do is about a quarter cup of sour cream, quarter cup of mayonnaise, a whole bunch of fresh basil, like the whole thing. And it's gonna it smells so good in here. When I was setting up, everyone's like, what's that? Somebody's like, are those mojitos? No, they're not. It's actually basil and it's just fresh. And all of this stuff is about to be harvested right now. So we're looking pretty good. I do lemon zest, and when you're gonna zest your lemon, make sure you buy an organic one if you can. Use your zester. This just gives it the lemon flavor that you really need, like so good, so fresh, so much lemon. Of course, we need a little bit of the juice. So I'm just gonna cut this bad boy, which is a nice lemon, not a lot of seeds. That's always nice. We're gonna cut this. We're gonna put some salt and pepper in there because basically, look at that juicy lemon. Yum, that's so delicious. Okay, and now I'm gonna put some salt and pepper in here. I'm gonna blend this when we go to break so you can just hear every word I'm saying right now. This is starting to sizzle up. It smells good. We're gonna flip these zucchini fritters. I think it's time. So it's about 4 minutes on each side, and then you actually just let them rest for a moment. Put some of the aioli on them if you want that, and enjoy them. If you want your aioli to be a vegan aioli, instead of using the sour cream and the mayonnaise, you can use avocado. So that would make it vegan. We're gonna have all the recipes on the website, so if you do wanna make these, and I highly suggest you do, then we will have those on the website. Thanks for joining us.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Welcome back to the show. Cece Zach at our sister station in Vail had the wonderful opportunity to sit down with author Heather Hansman about her book Powder Days and its exploration of the ski bums and the people in the communities that make skiing possible throughout American history. Let's hear what they have to say.
and I am so humbled today to have our special guest, Heather Hansman from Powder Days, the book. And before we get into the specifics of all these questions I want to ask you about the book, I want our viewers to know a little bit about you. You've spent quite a bit of time in the Vail Valley. What brought you here? What makes you keep coming back to Good Day Vail? Just tell us a little bit about yourself in the Vail Valley.
Sure, thanks for having me. I actually moved to the Vail Valley, to Avon in particular, when I was 21. I was fresh out of college. I had on the East Coast, and I had this idea that I wanted to live in a ski town that was pretty loose and unformed. And a guy that I didn't know that well, that I worked with during the summers, happened to work guest services at Beaver Creek. And so he said he could give me a job. And so two of my best girlfriends from college and I, sight unseen, drove our cars from Massachusetts to Avon and got jobs working at Beaver Creek and lived in the Tarns and kind of started my sort of journey as a real skier and a person in the ski town kind of started here. So it's really fun to be back.
Do you mind if I ask what year that was that you came out here?
2005, 2006.
Okay,
That
so
is me dating myself.
yeah, so it's about half the age of Beaver Creek. So you were right in the midst of when Beaver Creek was really starting to grow. And you say the Tarns too, and I'm sure the Tarns had been around for a few years as part of employee housing. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty weathered by that point.
Yeah, pretty weathered. As you and I were talking, you had mentioned that you started as in guest services, and you started as a ticket scanner, but you also wore a yellow coat for a period of time. So tell us a little bit about what that was like on the mountain as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Yellow Jackets get a little bit of flack for their jobs, but it was a really fun job to have because all we had to do was ski. And the year that I was there, they had just started the program, and we had a radar gun that we could play with.
A radar gun?
So
You're kidding me.
And I'm sure it was supposed to be to monitor other people's speeds, but we would just take it out and time each other. So that was a really fun time of my life.
Well, tell us, what did you top out at? You don't feel like you have to.
I don't think I can remember. It wasn't that fast.
Well, as a current ski instructor, I am so grateful to have Yellow Jackets on the mountain, and I'm very happy, actually, that there was a consideration for radar guns. I haven't seen any, don't even know if they have them, but thank you for doing your job back then. But that was clearly the beginning of your thoughts around this fabulous book called Powder Days that you just released last year. Tell us a little bit about what got you inspired to write this.
Yeah. So like I said, I moved here kind of right out of college. I ping-ponged around a couple other ski towns, and then I went to journalism school in Boulder. And when I did that, when I kind of moved down to the city and got a real job, I was really thinking about my friends who are still here and who are still in ski towns and were kind of living the dream, the quote-unquote dream. And I watched them kind of grow up and have kids and kind of establish careers and lives in these towns. And there's something really beautiful about it, but there's also some really, really hard parts to the ski bum dream that I think don't always get talked about, whether that's, economic instability or what's happening with the climate. And so that idea of living the dream and what that dream could be and what made it complicated was just something that I was really fascinated by in my own life. I kind of had this, sliding doors fear that maybe I had missed out on something. And as a journalist, it felt like this really interesting question to dig into. Can you be a ski bum? Could you ever? And where did the idea come from?
And the interesting thing about a ski bum is that not only are they skiing themselves, but they're providing a service for the community, for their own livelihood. So, what are some of the jobs that these ski bums hold or held?
Yeah, I think that a town like Vail, like this valley, like a lot of these Colorado mountain towns are really dependent on the service industry, on the people who work on the mountain, on the people who work in the restaurants and the lodging and the, healthcare services. And I think that when you're somebody who's living in, and I think this was kind of more true 15 years ago before so many people could work remotely, but if you're gonna commit to living in this town, you're really a part of this service economy that makes the towns flow.
And so what were some of the key findings that you had as it relates to individuals trying to make a living here in these services that actually benefit all of the viewers of this show?
Yeah.
What are some of those findings that you had?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. And I guess for a little background, to do the research and the reporting for the show, or for the book rather, I did basically a big road trip, which was really great. I did a big loop around the Western U.S. and popped into all these ski towns to kind of look at what the reality of hardcore skiers looked like.
Would you mind naming a few of those as well?
Sure,
those
yeah.
Areas that you went?
I started in Montana. I went through Big Sky and down into Wyoming to Jackson to Sun Valley. Did a loop through Utah, came through the Vail Valley, Summit County, spent a chunk of time in Aspen. So it was like really a big kind of Western U.S. I spent a little bit of time on the East Coast too. And in those places, every town has its own identity and its own kind of things it's dealing with. But in a lot of those places, housing was really top of the pile, kind of whether local wages could keep up with affordability, and kind of what the sustainability was of the local community. And as skiing gets more expensive, as real estate gets more expensive, we're in a time of inflation right now. So there's a lot of pressures on, the people who, A, love the sport that we all love, and B, are really supporting the towns that we live in.
And it's interesting you using the word sustainability, because in the context of what you just said, it was about sustaining the ski bum and those that service the community. But after reading the book, you also found out some other interesting environmental issues as it relates to sustainability as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, sustainability as a word applies across the board, I think. And we don't have, even if you take apart the community and the economy and all that, skiing doesn't exist if we don't have snow. So at the most base level, we need to be thinking about protecting the climate. We need to think about carbon reduction if we want skiing as a sport and these places that we live to exist even 10, 15, 20 years in the future. I mean, you look at this winter across the country and it's been really variable, California to New England. And I think that's not changing in a positive direction anytime soon.
Well, and I would imagine that some of our viewers don't really know the differences of what we've been seeing with climate, or I should just say the snow in those areas. Could you just tell the viewers, the variability that you've been following in these different areas?
Oh yeah, I mean the Sierras has their biggest snowpack in years, and my parents, for instance, live in New Hampshire, and it's been 50 degrees and raining there. So you get kind of the full spectrum of weather. I mean, and climate and weather are not the same thing, but they're very connected.
And which we'll get into shortly, because if we don't have snow, there is no skiing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about the response to the book. What have been the emotions of those readers that you've had a chance to spend time with?
Yeah, it's really, writing a book is so interesting because it happens in your brain and in your computer, and then all of a sudden it's out in the world for people. And for the most part, it's been really positive, and it's been really cool to hear from people who have read it and maybe connected with their personal experience or what they'd wanted to do. There has been I think this is kind of like the tricky thing that skiing as a sport is dealing with right now, but there has been some blowback into the fact that I talked about race and identity and economic inequality, and I think that makes some people really uncomfortable, even though that, who gets to be a skier, who can afford to be a skier, who's welcome in a ski town, I think is some of the most important things that we're thinking about in skiing right now. So tensions are high around some of those tricky social issues.
Well, those social issues are at the forefront of everyone's minds these days, but people are so afraid to talk about them. I enjoy seeing what Eagle County is trying to do in some of those areas. Vail Resorts is always looking for ways to try and tell us about how they're trying to help the community. But one of the things that strikes me is that there's the minorities are really growing as a huge part of the population here. And what I see from your book, and if we look at the ski bum as being the person that's servicing us, and they could be minorities in some instances, we've really got to spend time helping them figure out how to live life here with all of us and feeling comfortable about it.
Yeah, absolutely. If skiing doesn't reflect what our community actually looks like and what the country actually looks like, then the sport is going to die. I think like making it open and inclusive and welcoming and accessible is one of the most, if we want, skiing as a sport and as an economy and the archetype of the ski bum to live on, we really need to open the doors and make sure that it's something that's accessible to not just the kind of easy traditional image of the ski bum, which is a, privileged white man.
Yeah.
So I think that we really have to work on opening the doors.
So hold that thought, the privileged white man and the future of skiing. So
Welcome back to the show. Cece Zach and author Heather Hansman have been having an enlightening conversation about skiing and the history of the people in our ski communities and Heather's new book, Powder Days. Let's let them continue that conversation.
the Powder Days episode. I'm thrilled to have Heather Hansman here, the author of the book Powder Days. And when we left our last segment, we were talking about some of her findings as it relates to the emotions that her readers have provoked. And we talked about some of the negative emotions, which we'll get to in a second, but let's talk about some of those positive emotions that readers came to you and say, my God, this is such a great thing. I've learned so much from you. What are some of those things?
Yeah, I think part of what I've heard is that there hadn't necessarily been a book like this before that kind of encompassed what it meant to be a skier that wasn't just a profile of Warren Miller or Lindsey Vonn or somebody who was like a, celebrity. And it's just kind of like a normal person story. And I think that...
And I have to say, and thank you for bringing that up because it really is a normal person story, and I could relate to it so much, and I learned so much. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but it is a normal person story. So thank you for saying that.
And I think that for me, I thought I spent 4 years thinking about this book, and one of the things I've thought about a lot is why skiing is important, and if it is important, in the grand scheme of things. And I think, what I settled on for me, and what I think that has come up for a lot of people is that, skiing is something that I do just for joy, just for fun. There's no social pressure. There's no, if I go to ride my bike, sometimes it's for exercise, but skiing is just for joy. And I think that's a really important thing that we maybe don't get in a lot of places. And so I think that's kind of resonated for some people too, that we need to prioritize being outside and being in community.
And I'm happy that you're saying being outside too, because there's probably a lot of viewers that don't necessarily ski anymore, or at least downhill ski. And that's what the book resonated for me. It's not just about skiing, but it's how you can apply it to the mountains and what that brings to us here living in the valley. I mean, we are looking for that joy.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting, one of the things that, a book can kind of become a wormhole, it goes all these different ways, but one of the things that I ended up being a bigger piece of the book than I thought was sort of the mental health aspects of skiing and of recreating and why that feels important to people and why certain people are maybe more drawn to, move to Vail or push their bodies. But I think it's really important for our physical and mental health to be outside and be active and be in the environment. So I think there are, sometimes it can feel like, I know for me when I was younger, being a ski bum felt a little bit self-indulgent, but there are some real, physical, biological reasons why it's important for us to do this.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the book that sometimes when people do move to the mountains, it's to escape maybe a previous life or previous challenges that they have. And I bring that up because I am very proud of what I'm seeing here in the Valley with Eagle Valley Behavioral Health and others really tackling mental health head on because of some of the devastating things that we've seen here. And you mentioned a few of those in the book. So I'm really happy that you brought that up because our viewers need to recognize that this is something that we do need to talk about, we do need to embrace. And matter of fact, I think when we were preparing, I mentioned to you, I was at a restaurant in Avon the other day that they even have a mental health tax in your chit at restaurants now, where we can provide an extra tip, so to speak, or a tax that can be donated towards mental health issues here in the Valley. So thank you for bringing it to the forefront, and thank you for making it a topic that we can talk about.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to talk about. A lot of across the Mountain West, a lot of ski towns have incredibly high, disproportionately high suicide rates. Yep. There's a lot of people who are struggling. And I think sometimes the culture around skiing and outdoor sports is that, everything is awesome. You're having the best day ever. And when that's not true, I think it can be really hard. So I think it's really crucial to be talking about this stuff and kind of opening doors.
And you bring up culture. So, and you speak a lot about culture in the book. And all of those resort towns that you had mentioned, a lot of them have a lot of consolidation going on, which really reshapes the future culture. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts about the shifts you're seeing in ski resort town cultures.
Sure. Yeah, I think, one of the questions and one of the hard parts at the heart of this book is that I think it is becoming harder to make a living as a worker in a ski town. Things are getting more expensive. We have more short-term rentals and second homes. We have people moving in from outside. And I think that if we want these towns to retain their culture and to have a sense of community and a sense of liveliness and also just, people working and thriving in these places, we really need to think about, from a community standpoint, from a government standpoint, what it means to kind of hold on to that culture and how do we support, whether it's housing, whether it's transportation, whether it's education, how do we support the people who are in these towns who make the towns work? Because otherwise they kind of become empty shells.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for bringing up government, because one of the things that I've been following is that the town of Vail has a new strategic plan where I believe it's called the Vail Steward Plan, and they have these 5 pillars to not just evaluate, but to be able to make sure they do enough research in certain aspects of the town in order to protect the culture, in order to create the best world-class experience. I can't remember all of them, but it is called the Vail Steward Plan. As a matter of fact, I think it's being reviewed at the end of this month, and whereby they'll put resources again. My point being is that there is a part about the culture, and I see it shifting just in the few years I've been here. And my fear is that the more consolidation that happens, more big enterprise comes in, that the shifting culture is not necessarily a good thing for these resorts. So I wanted to highlight that as a piece to our viewers and to yourself.
Yeah. I think it's a really real fear, and it's not coming from nowhere. And I think that point about know what's going on in your local government. One of the things that that's really stuck with me in the book research and thinking about it. Auden Chandler, who's the head of sustainability at Aspen, and I apologize for talking about Aspen.
Oh, that's okay. We all learn from each other.
He's somebody who thinks a lot about community development and sustainability and whatever capacity that might be. And he said something to me where he's like, the problem with the idea of the ski bum and historically is that it's anti-citizenship. And you have this idea that like you're sneaking by under the radar and you don't have to pay for things and like you're kind of sticking it to the man. But if you think like that and act like that, then the world will change around you and maybe not for the way that you want it. So I think that idea of like being an engaged citizen in the community that you live in is crucial right now, especially as we see kind of big forces changing the towns that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, what you're telling me is that it's not just the ski bum that the government official was referring to. It really is around the community. And if we're going to live here, and I know just from my own experiences that the demographics here are shifting, and there's more people spending a lot more time here. We need to be a citizen, and we need to, forget what we know from where else we may have come from, forget those beliefs, and really jump in and be a part of the community. So, wow, it's an interesting thought. Let me touch upon one more topic that I know is very near and dear to your heart, and that's around the climate action and the various things that you see or you think we should be doing more of in these mountain towns. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we were just talking about with weather, like this is the most base issue for the future of skiing, I think. Are we going to have winter? And I think there's so many levers that we can push on. I mean, that local government and industry in where we live is a huge one. The outdoor industry is a huge economic developer. We have this huge, incredible amount of power that we could leverage in the government that I think isn't being done as much. So I think pushing big businesses to move away from carbon, looking at our elected officials and passing policy to move away from fossil fuels. I think that we have these kind of levers that we can push in towns like Vail that are really important.
Well, and I know Vail Resorts has their net zero program, and their deadlines are 2030, and it'll be interesting this year. I'm going to do some research on this to see how they're faring against that, especially since COVID. But I think it's really important that we all understand what government's trying to do, nonprofits are trying to do, what the big businesses are trying to do, and fall in line with our own daily behaviors.
Yeah, and as a citizen, you get to put pressure on the businesses that you use and your local government. Yeah. So I think it can be easy to feel overwhelmed and disempowered by climate change because it's so humongous, but like we have levers that we can push.
Yeah, one baby step at a time.
Sure.
So with that, if you had any thoughts you wanted to leave our viewers, if there was one or two things or a behavior change, what is it that you'd like our viewers to take away from this episode?
I think that idea about finding joy and fun is really important. And I think also that being an engaged citizen in the place that you live. And, if you want a town like Vail or like Avon or Edwards to, continue to be interesting and thriving and full of community, like that's on you.
Well, I love that because my favorite quote in the world is by Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in this world. And so I ask all of you to run to the Bookworm and buy Powder Days. I know it's there on the shelves. That's where I got mine, my signed autographed copy, when Heather was in last year for book signing. So thank you all for joining us.
If you have the opportunity to check out Powder Days, it's an absolutely wonderful read, so I strongly recommend you do that. Up next, we're going to have a conversation with Jordan Daines, a local artist here in Park City, who's going to tell us a little bit about her practice. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Jordan Daines. I am a contemporary painter. I'm based out of Utah and I work primarily with oil paint. I'm fairly obsessed with color, saturation, texture, and the perception that it creates in my work. It's the common thread that goes through everything. My work ranges from representational to abstract. My work kind of nods to different artists. I'm really interested in artists, abstract expressionists like Gerhard Richter and Richard Diebenkorn. You can see that in a lot of my more landscape-esque paintings, and then Wayne Thiebaud, Warhol for my more pop art. And then I kind of take things from those artists. With the pop art, I love the color, of course, the color, the texture, the cultural references. And then with the abstract expressionists, I love the creative process, which my work is a lot about process, and you can see that. I work in layers, and I have to work fast because it's oil paint. Oil paint still dries slower than other paint, but it gets tacky. So I do a first layer really thin, and then the second layer, and that second layer has become more important in my later pieces. Sometimes it's just like I just do like the whole background, and lately I've been doing little pops of color where I don't know exactly where, well, I know where I'm putting it, but I don't know what's going to come through. So I do that thinner layer, and then I cover it all with the really thick textural, really scooping up loading up my palette knife and laying it down. It ends up with a fully finished painting, and then I add the last step, which is taking my palette knife and either running it straight through, and then I have different works where I'll do different designs, and that creates the finished piece. And it's always something that I'm not exactly sure how it's gonna look until I'm finished with that last scrape. I really like hearing what people have to say about my work. Because I'm the artist, it means something to me, but I am more interested in what it means to the person viewing the art. I've heard a lot of different things. I mean, my work very much is landscape with the straight lines, like aspen groves. I hear a lot of that. But I've had people also take, something that could be an aspen grove and then turn to the side, and then it just makes it fully abstract. So I really appreciate the viewer's interpretation of my work. I have some flowers that I've painted where people see different flowers. Then I have these other just really kind of gestural, kind of just more scooping paint out, and I hear poppies, or I hear like leaves, you know, looking up or looking down. Anyway, so it's what I talked about earlier about the perception that the color, the texture, the saturation. I've had people tell me they'll see the painted part as the tree and the scraped part as the background. And then other people will see it vice versa. So it's like an optical illusion. I really appreciate that, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
This weather report is brought to you by Sun and Ski Sports, your new mountain sports headquarters.
Well, that's all the time we have for this special Saturday edition of Wasatch Weekends. Don't forget to catch us tomorrow, where we're going to get some wonderful career advice from Bill Humbert, the recruiter guy, and we're going to have a conversation with the cast of God Family Football, a new show available on Freevee. Until then, this is Wasatch Weekends. I'm your host, Ben Roof, and we will see you tomorrow.